Hi, I'm Scott Postma for Kepler Education, and in today's Practicum, I'd like to talk about a key feature of classical Christian education, that of asking perennial human questions. And I want to do it by sharing a lesson from a tombstone. Midway along our journey from Las Vegas to Reno, my family and I wandered off the highway into a savage and stubborn wilderness to find a rest stop to let the kids take care of business. What we discovered, though, was a strange piece of history that compelled us to explore and photograph an old historic mining town. Goldfield sits in the middle of the Nevada desert, recollecting shattered Ozymandias's half-sunk, sneering visage, with nothing but vultures and sagebrush littering the lonely sands that stretch far from the doleful town in every direction. One half expected to be greeted by a sign warning visitors, "Abandon every hope, all you who enter." Dusty and dilapidated, the bitter place was replete with rolling tumbleweeds, run-down saloons, and boarded-up bordellos. It was the kind of place where it would have been a sin not to explore the graveyard. So we set out in search of the eerie necropolis and soon located a small forest of white headstones, parked the truck, and stepped out into the windy inferno. Wandering among the dated memorials, trying to decipher the stories of shades who walked the dusty streets 100 years before, we came across the most unusual and intriguing tombstone. In one sense, it was very much like the others around it. It was made of white stone, stood about 2 feet out of the ground, and was etched with letters that were highlighted with faded red paint. Unlike the others, however, this one didn't have a name etched into it. Instead, it was inscribed with a surprising expression: "Unknown man died eating library paste, July 14th, 1908. I'm reminded in times like these that truth is indeed stranger than fiction. Like the front waters in an arroyo after a sudden desert rainstorm, the questions came slowly at first, but soon swiftly, until they gained momentum and swelled into a flash flood of inquiry. Why was a grown man eating library paste? Was he starving? Is that all he could find to eat? Was he mentally ill? Did he know it was library paste? Was it a frivolous prank that rewarded him with death, or a dare that earned him the first Darwin Award? What was he thinking?" Soon, the more serious questions, the human questions, spilled over the trivial ones, distilling truth like the clear waters of Lake Tahoe. Who was this unknown man? Was he a prospector, a cowboy, an outlaw? Where was he from? Were his parents living and looking for him at the time of his misfortune? Did he have children? Did he have siblings? Had he ever been married? Did those people who loved him ever know what happened to him? What was the nature of his spiritual condition? All of these latter questions were queries of identity. They were questions about his humanity. Whoever the unfortunate man was, his life ended tragically in a dirty mining town in the middle of a sweltering Nevada desert, and no one even knew what name to put on his tombstone. That frightened me for 2 reasons. The first reason was because he was nameless. Throughout ancient history, a person's name was symbolic for his or her identity. For instance, the name of the king of Israel and the probable writer of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, means peace. Remarkably, his reign was a reign of peace. Later through history, the surname was often associated with the family trait or with the father's name. For example, Smith is derived from blacksmith, and if Solomon had a last name, it would probably have been Davidson. My name, Scott, was given to me for the relational significance it held for my parents, as it was their favorite song, "Watching Scotty Grow" by Bobby Goldsboro. On another level, a name can stand for one's reputation. It's common for people to say that an individual made a name for himself, meaning that he succeeded in attaining some level of influence or renown. The Proverbs tell us a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. While no doubt one's identity or character is not based on the symbiotics of one's name alone, and such can potentially devolve into various forms of vanity, the idea that our name is significant to our identity is not without its merits. Like Abel of Genesis, the fact that this man died without a name, so to speak, though he was dead, yet speaketh. My fear was whether or not I would die with a name. The second reason it frightened me was that he was dead. But it wasn't the dying part that frightened me, it was the living part. We will all die one day, and as one fellow said, no one gets off this planet alive. And for the most part, we have as much control over our death as we did over our birth. In many ways, dying is the easy part to reckon with. Reflecting on Goldfield recalls another necropolis experience from years earlier, this time with a mob of teenagers in the middle of the night. For a youth activity scavenger hunt, we had to decipher people's stories just from the information written on their headstones. Buried in a remote and overgrown plat of sacred land, we found stories of people who lived through the Great Depression, some who were more than 100 years old when they died, and others who lived mere days on the earth. Like a 3-act play, the headstones displayed the date of a person's birth, the date of their death, and a dash etched between them. These headstones reminded us that life has a definite beginning, a definite ending, and some time in between. And like Linda Ellis's poem says, what matters most of all was the dash between those years. The dash is the only thing any of us have any significant control over, and that is what most bothered me about the unknown man's tombstone. Not only was there no name, there was no dash. What I took away from this man's tombstone is that when I'm dead, I want it to be said of me that I had lived a significant life. This strange experience, which started out as a short family pit stop on a long, monotonous road trip, has for at least these 2 reasons become, to me, symbolic for understanding what significance looks like. To put it simply, to have a dash means to have lived, and to have a name worth remembering means to have lived virtuously.